Welcome to Health Oddity, the show that strips away the jargon and hype surrounding all things health and fitness to help you live a long, strong and energetic life. Lining up at the bar this week, here's Peter Lant, Paul Bassett and James St. Pierre.
Hi there and welcome to Health Oddity episode 7 with myself, James St. Pierre, sitting here. We have Peter Lant sitting to my right.
Hello. Welcome.
We have Paul Bassett. We have Paul Bassett sitting beneath me.
Day.
And we also today have a very, very special guest, Mr. Rik Brown, joining us. He's our first international guest, joining us from California in the USA. So if you just want to quickly say hello, Rik, and then I will introduce you formally.
Hello, everybody. I'm delighted to be here again, talking to some of my friends from England.
Excellent. So we've brought Rik on today. I mean, well, obviously I won't talk too much because we're gonna jump straight in with Rik, kind of sharing his story and his passion with us. But I've really just been aware of Rik probably for the last year or so, and Rik is known internationally as Mr Maceman. So we're going to jump straight into that in a bit. I know that Peter Lant has also already done a certification with Rik a couple of years back when Rik was in the UK at the Commando Temple in London. And we'll talk about it a bit later on, but we're very excited to be looking to bring Rik back over to England next year in 2021, once kind of travel restrictions are a bit lifted and once we move through this pandemic and we come out the other side. So without further ado, I think we'll kind of get straight into talking to Rik, because I'm aware that a lot of people who are watching this maybe don't know what a mace is. Have never used one before, may have never even seen one before, and as Paul Bassett said last week, it's not the mace spray that you may use to fend off attackers. So
but you could fend someone off with it.
Rik, you could still fend someone off, yeah. So Rik, if you'd first of all maybe just like to tell us a little bit about yourself, your history, you know, where you are at the moment in the world, and and just introduce us to yourself, and also maybe you could mention, last week we talked a lot about Dick. We didn't talk a lot about, but we talked about Dick Van Dyke and the fact that he is still training well into his 90s. And you happened to message me and say, interesting fact, you actually once drove Dick Van Dyke to the Emmys in the 1980s. So that's a great segue between the episodes. So I'll pass over to you, Rik.
First of all, I'm delighted to be here. Thank you so much for having me. Peter, great to see you again. And James, of course, we've been talking. And Paul, never met you before, but I actually went to Bassett High School.
Oh,
Kismet.
The legacy lives on.
And yes, so I started as a high school wrestler long ago, and I worked out lifting weights, traditional bodybuilding. That's all we knew about, and I just became enamored with it. I fell in love with the training. The results were hard to come by. Despite being in all through my 20s and 30s, training as a bodybuilder in Southern California, in some of the top gyms. Being in Southern California, I ran into Lou Ferrigno a couple of times. I ran into Bill Pearl. I trained at his gym, 5-time Mr. Universe. I've met Steve Reeves. I've met John Grimmick, the first Mr. America. But it didn't rub off on me. I'm tall and lanky and thin, and bodybuilding didn't so much work for me, but I never lost the passion for training ever. And so I think in the mid 80s, I had a job as a chauffeur for one of the largest limo companies in California. And my assignment one night was to drive Dick Van Dyke to the Emmys, and very, very funny gentleman, very nice guy. He and I are both of Dutch descent. and we talked about that. And after the Emmys, I drove he and his wife to a local restaurant. And as they were walking inside the restaurant, he looked at me and he said that he had lost his cufflink, and it might have been somewhere in the car. Well, obviously, I tore the car up and I couldn't find this cufflink, but the cufflink meant a lot to him. And never found it, right? So he comes out a couple hours later. I drive him home. And then as I was driving out of his high security apartment, I hit a little speed bump and I heard a rattle, and his cufflink fell out from the seat. I immediately went back to him, rang his bell, gave him his cufflink. He was very glad to have it. He said his mother gave it to him. So that's the extent of my Dick Van Dyke story. Other than that, great gentleman, great guy. And so it's getting to be around the turn of Y2K, and some of the weightlifting muscle magazines at the time that I read were talking about this thing called a kettlebell. And there was a big noise being made in the States on kettlebell training. And I looked at it traditionally from a bodybuilding standpoint. Well, there's 3 sizes. What happens when I get too strong for the 3rd size? And but that's traditional bodybuilding thinking. Functional training looks at it differently. You don't need a myriad of sizes because you alter the position of your body, and now 16 kilograms feels much heavier than 16 kilograms or 32 kilograms, what have you. So I dived in hook, line, and sinker and bought a few kettlebells. Everyone, at least in America, in the early kettlebell era, about 2004 and 5, we all have our postal stories of the people that didn't want to carry it upstairs, and we had to go get it. But at the time, the only place to get certified was in Minnesota. So I booked a flight to Minnesota, and I stayed, and I did a 3-day RKC certification. And now I was off, and I was going to change the world. But living in Southern California, and I was already almost 50, as an older guy, people didn't share my enthusiasm for it. Didn't stop me. I still train people with kettlebells. I did meet some great people. Okay, we're getting through this. This is coming into the Mace really quick. I always kept.
So Rik, just quickly, when you did your RKC back in around sort of 2005, was that actually with Pavel? Was Pavel teaching the RKC then?
Yes, he absolutely was, and I did 2 or 3 with him in Minnesota, and then he did one in San Diego, and I was an assistant instructor there. So yes, that was prior to the big split. Pavel, I think I sent you a picture of me with Pavel, and he actually lives in Southern California here where I live. I've never seen him around, but I have trained in a few gyms that they say he's been there. So,
and Pavel, for everyone who doesn't know, Pavel is someone who brought kettlebells, I suppose, to the West, traditionally seen as a Russian fitness tool or used by farmers to weigh their goods. But Pavel brought the kettlebell to America first before it kind of made it over to the UK. I mean, obviously, historically, people had used kettlebells, but never been popularized in that way. And so for all of us, all 4 of us have kind of come through that route, and it's informed a lot of what we do in the way we perceive the world.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks, Paul.
So I always kept my ear to the ground, so to speak, and fitness trends, strength training. And it was because of being frustrated. That's what it was, being frustrated as a dismal failure as a bodybuilder that led me to the kettlebell. And I loved it. I embraced the technologies and the philosophies and I love teaching people kettlebells. On the computer at that time, I saw a mace. I saw a video of a mace, and a man was teaching the mace. Not really teaching it, actually. He was just presenting it online. He was a wrestling trainer. That intrigued me because I used to wrestle. And at the time, I had just gone through a divorce. And my divorce went 50-50. Half the money went to her and the other half went to her lawyer. So it went 50-50. So because of that, I didn't even have a computer. God bless her. You know, I didn't have a computer. I'm at the library on their computer, and I see this thing, the Mace, and I drive home from the library thinking, how am I going to find out about the Mace? How am I going to find out about it? And a truck pulls in front of me. And on the back of the truck in big letters, it says, learn to swing the Mace. You know, I never went to college. I'm not the brightest guy around, but I know when God's talking to me. And I did my bright light, I honked my horn, and I pulled the guy over, and I said, I want to learn the Mace. I've got to learn the Mace. A great guy, Jake Shannon of scientificwrestling.com, it found out that he lived 2 streets over from me. I took that as a clear sign that I need to learn the Mace. And I became his student, and we're still great friends. I remember I told him, I said, I want to take this to the world. And he said, I don't think there's a market for it. I said, no, I'm just learning about this new thing called the internet. I can take it to the world. I started teaching just my own kettlebell clients. I picked up a client. I was very fortunate. I picked up a client. I usually didn't even know what kind of work they did. And this guy was the video producer of the largest martial arts video company, Budo Videos, in the world. And after training with me for 3 or 4 months, he says, I want to do a DVD on kettlebells. And I'm thinking, boy, who are you going to get? And I'm thinking of all the celebrities in California. And he goes, I want you to do it. I was floored. I said, great, let's do it. Well, we did it. That video is on YouTube. You can see it. I had hair then. It was great. But the last chapter of that video, I went outside. I was training him with kettlebells, some heavy clubs, and then this thing called a Mace. When that video hit the public, I don't think anybody knew about it because nobody wrote and asked me questions about the kettlebells. What is that thing called a Mace? What is it? What does it do? And I thought, maybe more than just my private clients want to learn about this. So in 2013, I organized a seminar in Pasadena, California. I put flyers out and I advertised on the internet, and 18 people showed up. I never in a million years would have thought I could have got 18 people in one room. And they were interested. I took loads of pictures, no video at the time. I should have taken video, but I have loads of photographs. I since do photographs and videos of everything I do. So that led to a few local ones, San Diego, a little northern California. And then a gym owner called me from what I thought was the farthest away I'd ever be, Central California, 6-hour drive. That gym embraced the Mace, but they later formed the nucleus of Onnit organization. They moved to Texas, and that trainer is Onnit's top trainer now, but they don't talk about it, but they did learn the Mace from Mr. Maceman. But so I did a bunch of United States seminars, got flown to Arizona once, New Mexico, excuse me, and I thought, this is the peak. This is the greatest I'll ever get. And then the UK started asking for me. Then it was Ireland, and Ireland led to your beautiful country in Durham at Spitfire Gym, and that led to Italy.
Was that Paul? Yes, Paul Gray?
Yes, Paul. He's in Durham, I think. I think it was Durham or Newcastle on Tyne. That's the
Newcastle's where I'm from. So you've been to the best bit of the UK. Well done.
Okay.
I'm started.
I loved it. But so that led to Italy, Poland, my goodness, Norway, Australia. I did India even. That was one of my greatest events because India's never hired anyone that wasn't Indian to teach the mace. The mace comes from India. I did China. I like to tell people I swung the mace on the Great Wall of China and the London Bridge, and in front of the Colosseum in Rome too. So anyway, enough talking about my travels. I haven't traveled 1/10 what I planned to. Okay, I want to go. I want to take the mace all over the place. I have this feeling that this mace can reach so many people. It is a combination of both hardcore and not hardcore, if you can be that way. I can explain that, but it shouldn't scare you away like the kettlebell does scare some people away. But the mace is equally as hardcore with a great deal of finesse added to it.
Why would the kettlebell, for example, the kettlebell scare people in a way that the mace could be a more appropriate option?
Well, I'm honest to a fault. At every seminar, the first thing I say is, if you only have money to buy one implement, buy a kettlebell, because you can do thousands of things with a kettlebell. I mean, this is supposing that you're into alternative, unconventional fitness anyway. If you're not, just go to gym and push the machines. But for guys like us, buy a kettlebell. You can do hundreds of different movements with a kettlebell. Much more limited with the mace. I like to say that the mace is the icing on the cake, but the cake is the kettlebell. The reason I feel that some are intimidated by it when they try to do it on their own without instruction, there is a tendency for them to get hurt, especially when they do the cleans and the snatches. The mace is not like something for like a Bulgarian bag, which is a softer sandbag that you could drop on your foot and it won't hurt. You drop a kettlebell on your foot, it's all over. So some people have a fear of the kettlebell, which you shouldn't fear any implement as long as you get good, competent instruction. But there's a lower chance of injury, I believe, with the mace.
I know I've seen you, heard you before, Rik, say about many, because I mean, I've certainly found for myself, for my clients and members, that the women have really taken to the mace and they really love the mace and they love the way it feels and the way they can move with it and everything else. And I've heard you say before that sometimes men, they're a little bit, they think, well, it's only a 10 kilo mace or a 6 kilo mace, so maybe 15 to 20 pounds, but I can bench 100 kilos or I can squat 100 kilos. How's this little weight gonna kind of help me? So I wonder if you can just kind of explain what the mace actually does and why it's so different and why you love it so much, so just so people can understand that maybe.
The thing that the mace does is it takes weight and adds the element of leverage. Adding the element of leverage means that you can use less weight. I have some maces. Now, the average mace is a little over a meter. I'm trying to be British for you guys. So it's a little, I'd say 4 feet, but the average mace is a little over a meter. I do have a mace of my own that's 213 centimeters, okay? I'm a tall guy, but it's too tall for me. I have to stand on a box because I wanted to experiment with the load, with the length of the handle. And the longer the handle, the less weight you need. Very important. So I tell my clients to experiment with different length maces if you can get them in different lengths. But even if you just have a standard mace and it's too heavy for you, you choke up on the handle and you grip it closer to the load, to the ball, and you can do it. As you get stronger and more comfortable using it, you let your hand slide down to the very end, and then it becomes even more supremely effective. But leverage is a component of mace training that isn't found in a lot of other types of training. Standard weightlifting, linear strength training, the weight's close to your spine and you push it straight up. Okay, that's great, but it only uses strength. It doesn't use control. It doesn't use finesse. And that's what I love about the mace. It's the perfect blend of strength and control.
The mace, it's one of those things as well. Like anything, I think if you do it well, it looks easy and it looks like nothing So you'll have someone with a 15, 20 kilo mace swinging it around and it looks like nothing, but it's really hard. It's really hard to do with a heavier weight as well. And it's, I think it's kind of intuitive. Once you drop it behind you, you know you're going to have to move your hips. You're going to have to move everything. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. So it's quite. I think it's more intuitive than a kettlebell because you can do lots of things wrong with a kettlebell and hurt yourself. With a mace, once you drop it behind you, you're like, right, I'm going to have to learn how to use this properly.
I suppose why I came across it was because I saw people doing a lot of bench with very tight shoulders, and they were and I spent most of my life at a desk before I became a trainer, and when I first picked one up, and I bought one, I can't remember why I bought one. I just, you go on those little YouTube journeys, and I started seeing Indian guys with the Gada, and I was like,
with massive ones as well. Those Indian guys have got like 50, 60 kilos, which is bonkers.
But most of our populations are pretty locked up in the shoulders, kyphotic, and have shoulder surgeries and things like that. And often, they'll go to a surgeon before they'll do the rehab. Or the work they could do with a trainer or a physio and stuff like that. And I've always been very interested in kind of exercises that are both therapeutic and brutal, Yeah.
Well, it was like that because, Rick, when when you came over to the Commando Temple, which was 2017, 3 years ago?
Yes.
I think it was. And they've got, there was a few guys there who are fighters. And they were struggling because they're used to being in this position, aren't they? Like all closed up in the front. So obviously, for people listening, I'm bringing my shoulders forwards like a fighter would. Obviously, with the mace, it comes down behind, so you've got to open up your shoulders. So when they were doing it to get their arms to about here, trying to force it back over with might rather than just using, like you say, the finesse is that's the main thing, I think.
Finesse, momentum, centrifugal force, all of those come into play. So much of it. When you're instructed at a seminar, you just need to be guided, just need to be cued correctly. Your body has a way of quickly figuring it out as long as you know what not to do. And but if you pick it up on your own, it's just gonna be a big heavy sledgehammer to you if you pick it up on your own. Hence the need for good instruction.
Excellent. So if we follow on from what you've just said there, I mean, people. I think the mace-like kettlebells is possibly something that, and the need for good instruction that people maybe, like Paul said, you can go onto YouTube and you can watch a load of videos and then just decide to sort of buy yourself one and try it at home and just practice from videos without proper instruction.
That was
which
me.
is a lot of which a lot of people do with kettlebells as well, and maybe they potentially end up becoming injured because they may not watch a very good video, and it's difficult to do these things. So if someone was obviously they need to get proper instruction. We'll talk about obviously you coming over to the UK again next year later, but what's a good sort of if someone is going to go and buy themselves a mace to then start to learn, where would you recommend sort of a male and a female sort of starting from? Obviously, you have strong men and you have not so strong men, and you have strong women and not so strong women. But as a ballpark figure, what would you recommend people to start with on their sort of mace journey?
What size mace? When I started in 2004 or 5, there was only one size you could purchase. It was 10K, and the handle was rather long. I still have that mace. So I choked up because I didn't have the control. There's a rapid learning curve in the mace, and what at first seems impossible in 30 days' time will be quite doable, and in 60 days' time will be almost ineffective. So, but always err on the side of lightness. I think average women should start with 5 to 7K, and men should start with 8, 9K.
Excellent. Yeah.
If a man's real fly, if he's deconditioned, and if a guy's 50 years old and he's worked in an office his whole life, there's no shame in starting with the size that a woman starts with. Remember, this isn't the same as a deadlift where you do it 3 or 4 times. Once you build up to 10, now we add 20 pounds or so. It doesn't work that way. We work with higher numbers of repetitions. We work with time over as opposed to repetitions most of the time.
So why do people? So I suppose there's a couple of sides to this. On one hand, we work with populations that are looking to stay fit. They want to be exercising in a way that's going to help their joints. And I did certainly notice when I started using it, my shoulder mobility improved, my wrist strength, my elbow strength, all those things just started to improve. And it was, yes, like you say, there was a very steep learning curve. But from your point of view, when you started introducing them to yourself and your clients, what did you see as the benefit? Because it is, for a lot of people who have a choice of going to the gym, I mean, predominantly the people who probably listen to this podcast, there will be some trainers, but a lot of them will be our clients or people who've got very little experience with unconventional training techniques. There's the performance element, which would be for like wrestlers and things like that. And I'd be interested to see what the benefits are for the Mace that you're seeing with your clients and the people you teach. And also kind of the benefits for the average Joe as well, the person who wants to just be an enthusiast around health. I mean, there's two ends of the spectrum. There's the athletic one, and then there's the kind of beginner, which we mainly deal with.
Oh, that's easy to answer. The average Joe, okay, or Joan, will get upper back strength, shoulder strength, and stability, shoulder integrity. There's no word for rotor cuff injury in the Hindu language because they've been doing the Mace for 1,000 years there. They just don't have a word for that. Grip strength, absolute grip strength, and grip endurance, which in athletics, grip endurance is more important for most forms of athletics than grip strength. Limit grip strength. When you play tennis, you don't grip the tennis racket tight the whole time. You can't. So you need grip endurance more than you just need limit strength. There is the conditioning effect, a whole body conditioning effect, because of the fact that we generally train with higher repetitions, lower amounts of rest, higher repetitions. And there is somewhat of a therapeutic feel to these movements, very similar to the movement that people get from the lighter Indian clubs. They do it for shoulder rehabilitation, prehab with 1 or 2 pound clubs. Well, a 10K Mace can do wonders for you once you get to use it. And as James said earlier, some of the women like how it feels. It's because when you do a set of 10 to 2s or 360s for about 100 reps, it actually feels like somebody is massaging your trapezius. There's a warmth. It's just a great feeling. I thought I was the only one who felt that way. And then I started seeing on the internet other people, usually females, would comment on that. And I said long ago that on a podcast years ago that I believe ultimately females will lead the Mace Army. And it's starting to come true. So us guys, we have to pick up the slack a little bit. But the average Joe is going to get stronger shoulders, upper back, and grip. Absolutely.
I think you've seen Rik probably. I've got
James,
a gentleman I train.
Oh, sorry. Let me just add one thing. Oh, and this benefit of stronger shoulders, upper back, and grip, all in as an addition to what you're already doing. You don't have to drop everything and just train with the Mace, and you don't have to do it every day. And I can get you to do all that in 12 minutes, 2 or 3 times a week. 12 minutes, add to your existing routine, stronger grip, upper back, shoulders.
Yeah. Fantastic. I was going to say there's a gentleman that I train that I think you saw a video of recently called Dave, who's just turned 70. So he's been doing the Mace recently. He's the one who referred to you as a youngster.
I love that guy.
I love that guy. But he's quite a strong guy, but he's started using the Mace, and he just really uses the 4 and the 5 kilo because he just didn't have at 70 years old, as you appreciate, he was quite set, in his mobility. He's very sort of stiff. So for him, it was more about, he was quite strong, but it was more about trying to pull the shoulders back and get the mobility in the shoulders. So for him, it's been great, and he really, really enjoys it, So I think one of the things one of my members said to me the other day was that they love about the Mace is that it is is so. I mentioned to you, I think it's so inclusive. You know, no matter what size you are, male or female, what age you are, if you're overweight or whatever, you can start using a mace along with your other training, and you'll be very empowered, because you will actually, you know, on a weekly basis, you'll notice and you'll feel and you'll see improvements, and it's like learning a new skill, isn't it? It's very empowering for most people, I think.
It's another thing, because it is so skill intensive, and it isn't just strength. If you have the ability to deadlift 150 kilograms, you pretty much have to do at least 100 kilograms every time you work out with it, or you're not really getting much effect. So you always got to go pretty hard and pretty heavy. When you develop ability with the mace, you can use a mace that is half your normal weight. And because you're working your skill, you can still derive a tremendous benefit from it. I have all sizes of mace, and I don't use all of them all the time. Use whatever I feel like. And that's another benefit about it. You do not need to strain every single time you pick up a mace. There are some mace workouts that extremely high repetitions, in which I use a relatively light mace.
Excellent. And last week we were talking about longevity and training for health, you know, as we age. And I know that you're you know, 60 plus at the moment. Do you find, as well as your mace training, what other kind of, not necessarily training, but what do you see as you know, as a kind of a framework almost for training as we get older? I mean, what does your week's training look like yourself, Rik?
Well, I'm 62, and I find that the older I get, the less impact I want. I still train with kettlebells, but I found that over the years that I do more swings and snatches as opposed to the what they call the grinds, the presses, and the 3 power lifts have long since left my gym. Okay, squat, bench, and deadlift, I really have no need for them now. The type of strength that I want is strength that I can use on the move. And the bench press in particular, if you're tall and have long arms, it's a sacrifice to a pain god, and I no longer pay that sacrifice. So, and I know there's people that love it and love the squat and deadlift too, and I train alongside some of them, but God bless them. But it's not for everybody, okay? And whereas I believe the mace properly used can be.
Excellent. And do you also, I mean, sorry, go on, Pete.
No, it's fine. No, I don't want to interrupt.
Sorry, go on, Paul. Yeah. No, I was just going to ask, do you also, do you walk and things like that? Do you do any sort of intentional aerobic or cardiovascular exercise, or do you find that just doing the really high rep mace stuff kind of gives you that almost aerobic effect if you're using a light mace and doing very high repetitions?
I like the high repetitions. It just suits my personality. But no, I still walk. I feel that walking is underrated. We all need to be walking. Every animal walks. Okay. And again, even among walking, it would be good if you could find a gait analyst. I believe that's what they're called. I know one in Dublin. Dave Hedges, Wild Geese Training. He analyzes your gait, and there's people that can tell you what problems you have just by standing behind you and watching you walk away. The RKC came out with the functional movement screen that deals with a lot of postures, but just walking alone is great. And I'll be glad when things open up after COVID is defeated, and I can be free to walk anywhere I want. But no, in answer to your question, the mace does not do everything. Does a lot, and I like what it does. But no, I walk. Of course I walk. It's very important. That's my aerobic.
You said it was underrated as well, and I think that because I walk a lot. I used to do a bit of running and what have you, but it just hurt because I was never very strong and I wasn't very good at it. But walking, I love it because like you go a bit further, and it's just nice to be out all day. Sometimes it's very good for your mental health. You're out in the sunshine in Southern California. It will be here, not so much, but you know, you're out in the rain and all of that. And I say that to people all of the time, but there seems to be this culture of people wanting to beast themselves, for want of a better word, smash themselves, go run themselves into oblivion, train themselves, like HIIT training, things like that, train themselves into oblivion. So they do a session, and then by the end of it, they're a sweaty mess. And I often say, like, you know, that ends. Whereas doing the low level stuff, the walking, the like mace swings or kettlebell swings or something like that on a lower level, especially like, you know, we're in our 40s, so once we get to your age, we'll still be able to do that. Whereas the other stuff, people won't be able to do stuff at your age. You know what I mean? So what would you say about that to people who are maybe still doing that, and what effect it might have on them in the future?
You're going to pay a price I wrote a little Mace guidebook years ago because there was nothing in print. I'll gladly send it to anybody who asks it. I'll send them a PDF. But
if you've got a link to it, we'll put it in the show notes.
I'll find a link and I'll give it to you. And there's a quote in there. It says, "In the jungle of strength and conditioning, sneak up on heavyweights slowly, because if you chase after them, injuries will chase after you. And by the time you round 50, we're all pretty much held. I have a knee brace on right now. We're all held together by elastic bandages and things like that. And I covered a lot of that in my seminar, actually. I have recommendations for which ones are better than others. And if you limit strength and extreme strength, that's kind of like hardcore boxing. Who wants to see 250-year-olds box? I know Mike Tyson's coming back, but do you really, really want to see 250-year-olds box? I don't. Okay, I want to see two young guys who both want to hit hard. Let them do it. And the same with heavy benching, deadlifting, and squatting, and all this marathon running and things like that. I know I'm going to incur a lot of enemies by saying this, but as you get older, your training should become gentler. And the test in your training should be the volume of your training, not the load. If I see, like you have you showed me the video of the 70-year-old swinging the mace. I had no concern at all what was the weight he was using. He's 70 years old. He's swinging a mace. Okay, my father was gone at 70, before 70. If a guy's in there swinging a mace and it's just a broomstick, he's a winner. Yep. You're a winner if you're still in the gym at 70 years old, or in your living room and you're lifting whatever you lift. You don't have to believe me. You guys are young, but time will prove me right. If you try to hit it too hard for too long, your physical therapist will be very wealthy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we all deal with people who probably sometimes spend more time with their chiropractor or physiotherapist than they do with their trainer. You know, and I'm always interested in when you've got someone in a situation in front of you, it's like, how do I use their time wisely? Because they may be only giving me 2 hours, and I can always give them more things to do, but that's not always a solution. And it's finding what's the exercise. I know sometimes the exercises aren't always the most entertaining, but actually I think with maces they are, because there's an element of kind of craziness about it. Because I mean, I have a gym and it's glass, because I'm within a bigger gym and I've got a space and everything is glass. I haven't quite given my clients the go ahead to swing a mace in the glass room yet, but I do. I think. Well, I'm working up to it. It's just that each pane costs £5,000. So, but yeah. So I don't want that on my rent. But something like the mace, I mean, I just think it's a very, very effective tool. But I wonder why we're only just discovering it. I mean, I know the kettlebells, for example, were really big in the Victorian era. And I remember seeing pictures of the British military using Indian clubs, because obviously the British occupation of India, they'd noticed the Indians had incredibly strong shoulders, and they wondered why. But I wonder what had happened in the intervening years. Was the mace used in the old time strongmen, or is it something we've just gone, oh, right, okay, that's great, since the medieval times, you know?
I'm not sure I have an answer for that myself. I'm doing my best. I've dedicated my life to popularizing the mace around the world. And you spoke, I think at the introduction, you talked about mace not being the mace spray. Back in 2005, if you Google searched mace, the spray would come up first. Now, if you Google mace, the training implement comes up first. So I like to take some of the credit for that. I think that I've helped popularize it a bit. I'm not done yet. There's a lot of places I want to go, and I want to show everybody the mace. I want to show, because it is so applicable to so many people. I have taught people that were deaf and blind, 2 people with only 1 leg, and 1 person with no legs. You can train the mace in a wheelchair. So it applies. If you've got arms and hands, you can swing a mace, and you can do it safely. And if you go to a competent instructor and he certifies you, you can learn immediately how to visually see when people are doing it wrong, and you learn the cues to correct it. And it's not a 3-week process. Okay, I can do it in a day or 2.
Excellent. I think, Rik, because I'm aware of time and stuff, and I know that you've got up very early to. Rik was actually sat. There was a bit of confusion, and he came on the call 4 hours early because I'd said 1:30. So Rik came on at 1:30 in the morning in California time, and I meant 1:30 in the afternoon in England. So I sent him back to bed for 4 hours. And then he came back to join us at 5:30 in the morning in California.
Yeah, if you could look out the window, it's still dark. It's still dark here.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So what I was going to say, Rik, was to kind of start to wrap up is we're obviously looking to get you to come over to the UK in 2021. And you just quickly want to kind of tell people what we're going to plan, at least 1, potentially 2 sort of 1-day certification courses with you over in the UK. Do you just want to kind of let people know what they will be learning on those days if they decide to come along and meet you when you come over next year?
Okay, this is great. In one pleasant afternoon, the attendees will learn to master the basic mace training moves. The moves that are used in India for 1,000 years, they use them for competition. They teach them to wrestlers so that a wrestler can throw another wrestler to the ground. That's the reason the mace started. And I'll cover all the history of the mace, but the people will go away with a clear understanding and ability to use the 10-2 and the 360. You'll learn what those are and what they're about with 1 hand and 2 hands, standing, seated, and kneeling, and a handful of a few auxiliary exercises. People with compromised lower body mobility, bad knees, bad ankles, bad hips are more than welcome. Again, I've trained people with no legs. So if your legs are gone, you could still do fine in the class. And I hope to infuse them with my passion for the mace. If I find somebody in the class that really wants to take it far, I'll bend over backwards to help them. I will, and that help will continue long after I've come home to the States. They'll be working with me, and I get progress videos sent to me all the time, every day from somewhere in the world. Rik, look at my mace. Tell me this. What do I do? Okay, here's what you do. Here's how you fix it. Blah. And but the people that attend will be able to do that themselves, because I've seen so many people, and there's only a few common mistakes people make.
Excellent. And that sounds, I mean, I'm so excited, and I can't wait to obviously meet you myself in person and to do this. So we obviously don't have a date set at the moment, but I've already got a list of people who are very interested. So if people are listening to this and are interested in doing spending a day with Rik when he comes over to the UK next year, then please get in touch, and then I can add you on the list to be kept in the loop of when we have dates and that sort of thing. And also, Rik, if people do want to obviously find out more about you, find out more about the Mace, follow you, and maybe follow you on social media, that sort of thing, how do people go about doing that? Do you want to let people know?
Sure. On Facebook, I'm Rik Brown, R-I-K Brown, not R-I-C-K. I don't know if he's still on Facebook. There was an R-I-C-K Brown, who was a rapper from London, actually. I lost a lot of clients to him because I told people go to Rik Brown on Facebook, and they got the Brit and they didn't get me. But so it's R-I-K Brown on Facebook. On Instagram, it's at Mr Maceman. And if people contact me, they say, Rik, I live here. You're probably never going to come to this country. I live in Afghanistan, or I live in Uzbekistan or something like that. Well, I do have a very economical online course that I recommend to people. And so even if you live in an igloo on the North Pole, if you have a computer set up, you can learn my techniques of the Mace. Absolutely.
I do highly recommend, just personally, oh, sorry, Pete, go on.
Saying if you live in an igloo in the North Pole, just make sure you use gloves so your hands don't stick to the mace, because you'll take your skin off.
I was just going to say I can highly recommend the online course that Rik has, because I've been going through that myself for the last few weeks. So it's a 7-week online Mace course that I've been doing myself, which is a series of videos, really clear instructional videos, beautifully put together, and yeah, it's really, really, really good. Pete, do you have any final things you want to say or ask Rik at all?
No, I don't actually. Thanks for putting me on the spot, by the way, James. But no, I mean, I'll be interested. What happens for next year when you come over? That'd be good, because it'll be good. Well, if there's room, I'll come down to Unique Results as well, because I haven't been down there for a while. So that'd be nice, and it'll be nice to see you.
Excellent. And how about you, Paul? Are you all okay?
Paul's gone.
I'm on mute.
Paul's
there
muted.
There we go. I mute myself just in case I have a screaming child in the background. I've got loads of questions, but probably not relevant to most of the people listening, mainly from my own training. But I might just quickly ask you a specific thing when we finish recording. But I think it's fascinating. It's really interesting to hear about this, and I've always been very attracted to kind of left of center training methods, because I've never had that route through bodybuilding, or I've never been I'd never traditionally been a strength athlete. I'd always come more from endurance. So some of these kind of roundabout ways to strength are quite attractive to me. As much, they're just different expressions of strength, which I think is we quite commonly come across just like, what is strong? We're just picking something up and putting it somewhere. But actually, strength has multitude of expressions, and I think Mace is a very elegant expression of strength.
I like that.
Yeah, and I think it's really been great, actually, Rik, hearing you talk about training as we get older, and maybe letting go of some of the ideas of having a massive deadlift and a massive squat and a massive bench, and actually trying to think about what your body's actually going to thank you for in 10, 15, 20 years time, and taking a more balanced and a more elegant, the words you've used, a more elegant view of strength and movement in general, I think really fits in well with what all of us do, and with probably where a lot of our listeners are at as well. So no, that's great.
I love what I'll do. If you can look elegant as you get older, that's
Well, I'll swing my mace in a seat.
That's a good thing.
Brilliant. So what we'll do, Rik, we'll all the contact details for you. We'll pop in the kind of the show notes and stuff, so people can have access to the links to social media and maybe we can pop as well, Pete, a link to the online course and stuff like that on there, so people can have access to that. That would be
and that PDF as well. We just need an internet link to it or whatever, and I can put that on. Yeah, that would be cool.
Brilliant. So just want to say thanks so much, Rik, for joining us, and thanks so much, Rik, for joining us, and thank you so much for getting up early in the morning in California and speaking to us. And it's been an absolute pleasure, and it's been a joy speaking to you for the last 45 minutes. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I've been delighted. Thank you.
Cool. Do you want to say goodbye, Pete?
Ta-ra, Pete.
Do you want to say goodbye, Paul?
Bye-bye.
Bye, Paul.
And Rik, do you want to say goodbye?
What's that?
Do you want to say goodbye as well, Rik?
Yes, I say goodbye to all three of you gents. I look forward to seeing all three of you too.
Lovely.
Goodbye to everybody out there.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Take care, guys.
You've been listening to Health Odyssey with Peter Lant, Paul Bassett and James St. Pierre. To get your regular fix of hype-free health, you can subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your favourite podcasts. You can find out more on today's and other topics at healthodyssey.com or find us on Facebook or Instagram by searching for Health Odyssey.